Que lo que mi gente, welcome to the Monoplaza F1 podcast. As always, I'm your host, Emilia-Romagna, and with me today is no one. It's just gonna be me, y'all. No, hopefully that's okay. It is going to be me as I cover hold on, let me look it up because it's a really long name. Honestly, we're covering Imola. All right, we're covering the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Yeah, first and foremost, congratulations to Max Verstappen. I said from the beginning of the season, going back all the way to testing, that Max Verstappen was not going to have the fastest car. Now there's no caveats for me there, right? Like some people have said that Verstappen, is doing amazing things. He is. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But to say that he is in one of the slowest cars on the grid, I don't think anybody is saying that. But on any given day, given the track, obviously Red Bull is clearly top car or top one, two. So all of that being said, congratulations and giving credit where credit is due to Max Verstappen, fresh off the heels, not fresh, but a couple weeks removed on becoming a dad. So again, congrats, all that. So see, very congratulatory, right? And that's very important for me to say now because if you ever hear me say any haterisms on Max, just know from the bottom of my heart, I am not a Max Verstappen fan. I don't hate Max Verstappen because that's dumb. Why would I hate a complete stranger? I'm not a fan of Max Verstappen. But for me to sit here and tell y'all that Max Verstappen is not great, that is not good, that he's not a generational talent, ridiculous. All right. So I'll give him his flowers. All right. I may not be a fan, but I'll give him his flowers. So respect credit where credit is due, and especially because of how he won that race. So we're gonna get into it in a little bit. So yeah, first and foremost, yes, he won the race. He is now within 22 points of Oscar Piastri, who is still leading the championship, and about 6 points behind Lando Norris, who is still hanging around. So shouts out to Lando, shouts out to McLaren. It could have very easily been a McLaren 1-2. Obviously, it was not. But McLaren, I'm not going to say that they did what they were supposed to, because what they were supposed to do was win. It should have been a McLaren 1-2. But McLaren, in spite of all their strategy mishaps and stumbles, still managed to bring that car in second and third. So they're podium finishers. Now they got very lucky. Um, it is my belief, and I think that is a belief that is shared by a lot of people that had one of those safety cars, particularly the last one, um, especially given that it was in the relative area of where Esteban Ocon had his crash. So when Kimi had the crash, right? So rewinding, stay with me. Had the safety car that was caused by Kimi's car just failing, had that safety car ended at least 2 laps, maybe 3 laps earlier, Oscar Piastri would most likely not be sitting on the podium. Simple. All right. Lewis Hamilton would have caught him. Lewis Hamilton finished the race about a second or so behind Oscar. So, yes, McLaren, I'm going to say it was probably damage limitation for them at the end of the race. I don't know if they got very unlucky with the safety car, definitely with the strategy for sure, which helped Max maintain that lead. So yeah, overall, I'd say it was a fairly interesting race. I'm not gonna lie, I was dreading it a little bit because Imola traditionally is not a course where you can have a lot of overtaking opportunities. So if your car is not fast, or if you're not able to do something gutsy or something brave, then yeah, you're basically going to be stuck in a DRS train for the entirety of the race, which is it's so terrible for racing. It's so terrible. The cars can stay close to each other. That's awesome. But they are so big that you cannot overtake. So, all right, let's rewind and go back a little bit to what happened throughout the weekend. Qualifying, first and foremost, was or has continued to be great for the likes of Williams, who have shown that their car at least in qualifying pace, is a great car. Now, race pace, I'll have to dig into it a little bit more, dig into the data, and figure out, okay, is there race pace actually for real? But regardless, Williams organizationally, especially since James Valls came into power, the TP position over at Williams, has been doing great. This year, the team has been executing. Again, I was probably one of those who early on said Carlos Sainz was going to baptize Alex Albon in the previous episode. I apologize. I'm not going to apologize again. But you see that now Carlos Sainz is starting to get a little bit of his footing over at Williams. Now, a lot of people, I think, will, I'm not going to say understandably, but maybe jump to conclusions and assume that, yes, it's the Carlos Sainz effect. Look at what Carlos Sainz is doing. As soon as he gets to Williams, Williams is going to, or Williams has suddenly become competitive. Alex is a strong driver. Carlos made the team even stronger. So with the combo of Alex and Carlos, Williams is doing great, but all of this is due to the Carlos Sainz effect. Now, that is not necessarily my take, right? With a caveat. Carlos Sainz coming to Williams, I definitely feel like is a huge improvement over the likes of Logan Sargent, over the likes of one Franco Colapinto, who I really like, because he's Carlos Sainz. He's a 3-time, 4-time, I think, race winner. But to credit Williams' success solely to Carlos Sainz is probably a little bit of a disingenuous take into what the team has done over the last 3 years since I think Valls took over, and or 2 years. Was last year his first year? 3 years. Man, you know what? Hey, let me look that up on the internet. All right, y'all. On the Monoplaza F1 podcast, we take accountability of whether or not we know or don't know something. So let's see. James Valls' tenure at Williams from 2023, yeah. So this is going into his third year as the TP for Williams. Regardless, all right, okay. So Williams had already been doing the job to get that car up to speed, to get the team organizationally in a better spot. Obviously, we've all heard the stories about the Excel worksheets and everything that was not up to standard, and how Valls is basically trying to bring that up. All right. That being said, sure, Carlos Sainz was given the opportunity to hold on. I think I'm about to sneeze, and I'm leaving this in the recording because, yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, you may just hear a spot of, oh nope, it went away. Hey, all right, back to it. Sorry, y'all, back on my tangent for Williams. So Carlos Sainz came onto the team. Yes, he was allowed to come onto the team earlier. Great. Carlos Sainz is a great driver. Absolutely agree with that. But to say that the success of Williams currently is solely dependent on Carlos Sainz, I don't believe it. Especially when you look at Alex Albon, who currently has 40 points. Is probably the most he's ever had at Williams, and it's probably the fastest he's ever gotten to 40. Just generally speaking, probably since his Red Bull days. I'm not even sure he may have gotten to 40 points or more when he was at Red Bull for that year and a half, right? Anyways, back to what brought us to this tangent. Williams continued to do great. They outqualified both of the Mercedes, or not the Mercedes. Wow, both of the Ferraris. See, I was thinking Mercedes because in my head, even though I know that Lewis Hamilton is Ferrari, he was with Mercedes for such a long time that I thought, yeah, Carlos Sainz outqualified Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is on Mercedes. He is not. He is not. Lewis Hamilton is on Ferrari. But yes, Williams did great. They were able to qualify super good, and continue that streak of just doing well. Now, I will also do a caveat. Yes, Carlos Sainz outqualified Lewis Hamilton. I put that more on Ferrari's car, as quite possibly, I think they're not even the fourth best team. I think somebody put out a stat that Ferrari is like the eighth fastest car at Imola, at least during qualifying. Atrocious. A team of that magnitude, of that stature, should not be the eighth fastest team on the grid. I'm not even talking about facilities. I'm not talking about the star power that they have. I'm simply talking about a team like that should not be behind what was supposed to be a mid-tier team. All right. So Williams did great. Aston Martin also did great in that they were able to knock out both of the Ferraris in Q2 on medium tires. Let me rap to you for a moment. Tifosi. I'm new to this. Y'all are true to this. How? How have y'all managed to be fans of this team year after year after year? And I have a very good friend of mine who runs another podcast, very famous podcast. He's been on the show a couple times. Who, as soon as he found out that Ferrari was changing 99% of their car and only 1% of it was going to be the same from last year, he said, "Okay, this season's over. Ferrari's not going to win anything." And right now, I guess I will wait until what happens after Barcelona in Spain when they do the new technical regulations. But it's not looking good. So hey, shouts out to the Tifosi for continuing to be Ferrari fans year after year after year after year, especially after all those years of dominance when Michael Schumacher was there and when they had the likes of Kimi Raikkonen, Felipe Massa, obviously Sebastian Vettel, and even Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, right? Always have had decent drivers, but the results have always been less than stellar or disappointing at the end. Because what you want is the constructors. What you want is a driver championship, right? Anything else, especially for Ferrari, is not great, right? Anyway, so in qualifying, Oscar Piastri was able to put it on pole. I thought that perhaps Piastri is going to continue his streak of converting poles to wins. Previous to this, he had gotten 4 poles and he had gotten 4 victories. He did not get the victory this time, so his percentage goes down a little bit. Still very impressive by Oscar, so shouts out to him. Max was able to finish behind Oscar in qualifying to start P2. And to the surprise of no one, at least not me, George Russell was able to put that Mercedes into P3. Mercedes does not have the fastest car, but they do have a consistent car. Now, they have a consistent car in that it's fast when it's cold, and it is not great. It's terrible when it's hot or warm. It eats up those tires. That has been the ground effect era Mercedes car. And guess what? It's the last year of these regulations, so they're definitely not going to be able to fix that anytime, nor will they want to fix that anytime soon. I'm sure their focus is solely on 2026 in the new set of regulations. Regardless, George was able to put that P3. Now, going to P4 is Lando Norris. This is, and I'm going to stop talking mostly about qualifying after this. This was a situation where Lando, I think many have said it. Again, I'm not going to dog on him. I always say that. I always feel like I have to preface that before I say anything about Lando. Lando needs to understand, especially at a track like Imola, where overtaking is difficult, that any mistakes made during qualifying is going to cost him any chance at a race win, right? So Lando's making all these costly errors. Those costly errors are costing him a 10th here, a 10th there, a millisecond there, whatever it is. Anyways, starting P4, it's not the move. That's not it. And so for me, obviously, like, as long as Oscar keeps racking these up, obviously by the time we hit summer break, the championship will, hopefully it's not, will most likely be out of reach for Orlando if Oscar continues to string these together. Again, he didn't win this time, but that snaps the streak of like 3 in a row that he had won, right? Okay. And I know I'm not saying anything like crazy or otherworldly. I'm not giving you any in-depth analysis by saying like, yeah, if Oscar Piastri keeps winning races, he's going to be the champion or at least put it out of reach from yeah, yes, duh. So I apologize. I'm in my Will Buxton era for a little bit, but anyways, Lando could not afford to start that race at P4. Lando could not afford to make the mistakes that he's making in qualifying. Oscar is capitalizing on it and is showing dividends. So yeah, qualifying was qualifying. Obviously, I literally just got done mentioning that Ferrari was knocked out. P11, P12 now. To talk about that, and I want to kind of quash that for a little bit. Lewis Hamilton, not in all circles, but in some circles, has been blamed for not meeting the standards of that car, for not meeting the expectations that everybody thought he was going to bring. Again, by his own measure and by his own words, he says, "Hey, I'm coming into a new team. It is going to take some time to adjust to this team," right? And some people, some of y'all have been quick to dog him in spite of him saying all of that, to say, well, you're the 7-time, 8-time world champion. This should be a cakewalk. you're not meeting expectations. You're washing. To those people, I say, hey, touch grass. Okay, respectfully, of course, because the situation is this: the car is not good. Lewis has been consistently saying these are the things that are going on with the car. In his positive PR imageness, he's obviously saying, hey, you know, we can unlock the potential, but we need to fix these areas, XYZ thing, right? And at every turn, he's been getting dogged. What's been wild to me, and the reason I'm bringing it up, is that Charles Leclerc, who's been with that team for 7 years, has also said similar things about the car, except Charles must have had it or he's been going through it, because he essentially is saying, like, this car is not good. It's just not fast. I expect more from the car. The car is not performing at the level that the car should be performing. It's trash. This weekend, both of them were complaining about the brakes, in spite of the brakes being the upgrade that they brought to Imola, right? So I'm mentioning it only to say that if you are going to dog or say, like, Ferrari should have kept Carlos Sainz, no, they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. All right. Carlos Sainz had reached his ceiling at Ferrari. Between the two, I've mentioned it before. And I know when I say I'm not really trying to knock him, regardless, whatever comes out of my mouth next will make it seem like I am. Carlos Sainz is not Lewis Hamilton. Carlos Sainz has won a couple of races, but Carlos Sainz is not Lewis Hamilton, right? You talk about the Carlos Sainz effect. Let's talk about the Lewis Hamilton effect and what he brings to the team, the work ethic, the feedback, everything, all of that. And if this guy, this man is saying to you, hey, these are the areas that we need to fix. Hey, the car is just not good there. This is going on. I take that and I listen to that because I can do something with that feedback. Now, when the criticism also comes from your other driver, so the driver who is right now the faster of the two, barely, right, is saying, yeah, the car's just not fast. The car, I'm just curious, and I'll leave you with that question before I get on to the race, why we're only focusing on Lewis. I mean, I understand why, but, like, it's again a little bit disingenuous, especially I'm talking to you, Autosport, for putting out the infamous article headline. And I know y'all need those clicks, and I know ESPN also needs those clicks. Shouts out to y'all, I guess. But Autosport puts out the headline saying, oh, Lewis Hamilton has been outqualified, or Carlos Sainz has outqualified Lewis Hamilton 6 times now. Hey, bully for you. Uh, Out of those 6 times that Carlos Sainz has outqualified Lewis Hamilton, how many times has Lewis Hamilton finished behind Carlos Sainz in the race? Carlos Sainz started way ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who started in P12. Carlos Sainz finished that race P8. Lewis Hamilton finished that race P4. I'm saying, all right, just well, hop off. That's literally it, right? Um, and so we'll see. But regardless, they got to button up that qualifying. I'm not saying that he is above reproach. As much of a fan as I am of Lewis Hamilton, um, I put this more on the car in terms of getting up to speed, in terms of getting that car into a window that needs to go. I don't know what Fred Vasseur, what data he's looking at, unless he's saying this is boding well for next year's car, and this whole thing has just been a one big great experiment for the car next year. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking when they changed the car. So yeah, it is what it is. But regardless, the race began with, again, Piastri P1, Verstappen P2, George Russell P3, Lando Norris P4, I think Albon P5, and then all the way down to the people that matter to me: Charles Leclerc 11, Lewis Hamilton 12. Right? Not super duper great. Right? What happened at the start of the race was probably one of the bolder moves, and probably one of the things that one of the main factors that led to Oscar losing this race, right? So, as most of you who watch the race know, that starts off, and essentially George Russell jumps both Verstappen and Piastri at the start of the race. Piastri reacts to George Russell and goes to cover off George Russell, leaving that right side of the track. That's the grippiest part of the track. Got the best braking zones wide open for Max Verstappen. Right now, a lot of people will probably say, yes, he was covering off the wrong guy. because if anything, he should have let George Russell. I mean, he shouldn't have let George Russell do anything, but he shouldn't have been worried or as worried about George Russell as he was, right? Okay. So he ended up covering off George. Max passed him. Max never relinquished the lead. And this was crazy too because the pits at Imola is one of the longest pit lanes on the circuit. And so you lose about 30 seconds when you're in there, right? So literally, as soon as that happened, Max was in the cool air. He was more or less able to get away from Oscar. Oscar was never really able to like catch up. He was in that dirty air. Okay, awesome, great. Now, the criticism obviously comes again. Oscar shouldn't have covered off George Russell. I think, however, that perhaps for Piastri, he was thinking two things. One, I don't want to get stuck behind a slower car that will give Max the opportunity to go faster if he does pass me. And two, he probably assumed that the McLaren was going to be faster than the Red Bull. So let me cover off this slower car and then I'll be able to pass Max on track. That never happened. Clearly, that never happened. Again, he never got close. I think Oscar just reacted on instinct. You saw another driver get the better of you, and you're just trying to cover off the driver that's super fast. Now, something interesting that I heard, and I heard it last night, was Oscar Piastri made that mistake because it was a mistake, but Oscar Piastri will probably never make that mistake again against Max. Obviously, we've talked about Max races his teammate Lando Norris a lot differently, doesn't really respect him. Oscar, especially going back to Saudi Arabia, is somebody who does not show any fear compared to Max. However, Oscar still has a lot to learn and ways to go. He may not be as scared or afraid of Max or whatever euphemism you want to insert there, but Oscar has a long ways to go in terms of learning how to battle Max. That being said, he's a quick study, so I'm not worried. I am not worried. This will probably be the last time. Famous last words, fingers crossed. This will probably be the last time that something like that happens to Oscar. Now, the story of this race obviously was the safety cars. Esteban Ocon found some bad luck. His car did not make it to the race, and so cool. They call that first safety car, first virtual. And in that respect, Max Verstappen got super lucky. He was able to pit under the safety car. So was Lewis Hamilton. So was freaking Kimi Antonelli, right? So these guys all got the benefit of safety car. Probably lasted a lot longer than it should have. Okay, cool. Towards the end of the race, Kimi Antonelli, obviously, his car also gave out. Now, the car, although it seemed like if it was in a similar position than Ocon, his car ended up stopping a little bit further up the hill. And so, again, when you pay attention to it and you call it out, they mentioned that it was going to take a lot more to get the car out because it was sitting at the top of the hill. Of course, because of that, that safety car lasted a lot longer. And the thing that I want to bring up about that was that it caused a little bit of chaos, right? Again, for whatever reason, they didn't pit Piastri, or they had just pitted Piastri, or I'm trying to think. Long story short, they pit Lando Norris, and he came out behind Piastri. Piastri was on 12 lap old tires at that point because he was not able to pit under the second safety car, right? McLaren should have done bare minimum. McLaren should have done team orders at that point. They didn't. Okay, Lando finishes P2, but they should have gotten Oscar out of the way a lot faster so that he could have gone after Max. So would he have been able to reach Max? I don't know if he had enough laps, right? The McLaren during the race wasn't making a big enough of an impression on me to do anything. All right, cool. The person who had like the worst luck under the safety cars obviously was Charles Leclerc. He was another one who suffered and was not able to pit. And so Lewis Hamilton was able to go into the pits, get some new hards on. Charles Leclerc, unfortunately, was not able to pit because they did not have tires for him that would make sense, in spite of Charles saying, like, hey, just strap some softs on there, call it a day, I'm good. They're like, Charles, Charlie, we have 17 laps. That's not going to make it to at all, right? I think at some point he also tried to get the team to say, hey, tell Lewis to give me DRS, or like, he's out of range, big dog. It's just you. Ultimately, he had a non-incident with Alex Albon where he pushed Alex Albon wide and off of the track. The team him, right, to give the position back. Charles was like, okay, that's dumb, right? But ultimately, it resulted in him being able to finish behind Alex Albon without any time penalties issues. So the team obviously was guarding against that, right? Um, so yeah, not super great. Besides those two, I think that the person who had like probably like the worst luck of the weekend was Kimi Antonelli. On a weekend that was his home weekend, he had his schoolmates, which by the way is super wild. It's super wild to me that Kimi Antonelli goes to school or at least has homework during the weekdays, right? And then on weekends he is on track. Like you could not keep me on track. Or at school, folks at school. If I already had a job, that bag secured, I had a contract, I had millions of euros in my bank account, nah, dog. I'm not paying attention to your trigonometry or your history. I got bigger fish to fry. But you know what? Shouts out to him for at least finishing high school. They got the Maturità exams in Italy, so hopefully he passes those, and maybe there's a career for him after F1. I don't know. Regardless, Kimmy was not able to do anything during qualifying and was knocked out in the second qualifying round right behind Lewis Hamilton. He did have a good race start and he was able to get past Lewis Hamilton at the start, but starting P13 was probably not in the cards. And then to cap it all off, my man's car just stopped working. And so he wasn't even able to finish that race. And quite possibly this will be the last time in a while that they consistently race at Imola. I think next year they'll probably bring Imola back, but we will see after that because I believe that street course that they're building in Spain, the Mad Ring, is going to be replacing Imola. By the way, I can't believe I never mentioned this. Honestly, it's because I never make any videos. I should make more videos, frankly. Okay, housekeeping, make more videos. Yeah, the Mad Ring promo video is kind of a big WTF moment for me because you're telling me that if you and specifically the demo of the guy running the track, right? Video game style, whatever. That was quite possibly the worst hot lap I've ever seen a sim racer do, because I don't think that guy was actually a sim racer. But the question that I have, y'all mean to tell me that they couldn't have done that take over and over and over, just ran that lap a bunch of different times till they found one that was good, one that wasn't crazy, one that didn't look like this person didn't know. Side note. Anyways, whatever. So apparently Madrid is not going to be complete in time for next season. So Imola might be able to stay on. And then who knows what will happen after that? Are they going to be on rotation with different tracks, right? Is it going to be like Spa? Is it going to be like Zandvoort where they're not consistently there, but they do present themselves, right, in the rotation every once in a while? Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry, if you're watching on YouTube, I just coughed, but I muted myself. If you're listening on Spotify, I just coughed. So there was just like a silence. That's why I said excuse me. Anyways, so yeah, Kimmy had a terrible weekend. Yeah, wrapping it up because it's not, again, there's not a whole lot to talk about. Shouts out Isaac Hajar. Holy crap, thinking about what happened. This week was the inaugural race of Franco Colapinto back in the trenches, back with Alpine, and what what a what an interesting weekend for Franco. One, obviously, Los Hincha in Argentina were super excited to have him back. Now, if you don't know anything about Argentine racing fans, those people live and breathe the sport. Unfortunately, desafortunadamente, they take it a bit far with their hinchaness, their fanaticism, quite literally, right? Because over the weekend, they were throwing racial abuse at Yuki Tsunoda for some hand gestures. All right, I think he flipped off Franco during the race, and they were saying a whole bunch of crap about Tsunoda. A lot of it racist. All right, it's not doing Franco any favors at all, at all. So much so that the team ended up putting out a statement. Hey, we don't do that. We don't support that. We don't stand by it. To his credit, Franco Colapinto has come out a ton of times and said, hey, don't do that. We don't do that. This is not a good look. It's not good. I don't support that. I don't agree with that. So Franco is doing literally everything that he can, uh, but he does not control those fans, right? Um, what I will say, it's very interesting that Alpine put out a statement for that. Hey, we don't abide by this. We should all be respectful, blah, blah, blah. But where was this statement when Jack Doohan was getting the business? Where was that statement when Jack Doohan was getting the business? I agree that they should have put out that statement because there is no room for racism in F1. Where was that statement when Jack Doohan was getting abused online? All right. As for Colapinto, he did not have super great qualifying. He was one of the two crashes that happened during qualifying. Yuki's, which was really bad, Colapinto, which was equally as bad. Briatore also came out this weekend and said, Colapinto's got more than 5 races. We want him to do the best that he can, and he has my full support. Blah blah blah. This, that, and the third. Cool, got it, perfect, right? Um, Not great though. A team that doesn't have as many resources as they should, in spite of being like a pretty renowned team, can't really afford to be crashing as much as they do, right? So yeah, do with that what you will. Colapinto did have a better race than he did qualifying. Up next though is Monaco, which is not an easy street course. It's one of the hardest ones on the circuit, and so hopefully Franco can keep it together. I think that he will, and just get some points for that team. All right. Yeah. Another person who did really well this weekend, Hadjar continues to have a really great season for me. As a rookie, he's doing super great. Um, he recognizes the level of talent. I am probably one of the few people that want Hadjar to stay in Racing Bulls and continue to develop. I think that Racing Bulls is actually a good feeder system. Yes, it's their sister team. Yes, that's a separate conversation for like another time. But for now, I would prefer that Hadjar, he's going to be hard to ignore because he has outqualified his teammates. He has outscored his teammates. But for now, Hadjar, I think growing into that team, if he ever gets called up to Red Bull, great. But I feel like Red Bull just kind of like chews people up, spits them out. Not to mention that you got Lindblad chilling in F2 that will most likely have a seat next year. That being said, in spite of Hadjar having a great season, he still does not have a contract for next year. I think he will have a contract for next season. Unfortunately, I don't think Liam Lawson will. As long as he keeps doing what he's doing, Lawson will definitely need to improve. But Hadjar, and I'm specifically bringing up because Hadjar at least self-reflects enough to understand, yeah, I got a P9, but I'm super disappointed. And by his own account is saying, like, it must mean something that I'm disappointed with a P9, but it's still in the points. I like that kid. I really like that kid. To me, it's not even a toss up between him and Antonelli. I like Antonelli as a rookie as well, but for me, Hadjar is probably the most consistent and probably the best rookie out of the bunch. Yeah. Aside from that, again, I'm so sorry. If you are a fan of Sauber, soon to be Audi, I've got nothing for you. Love me some Hulkenberg, love me some Bortoleto. They were there. They were at Imola. Full stop. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll continues to have all of the points for Aston Martin. Interesting quote coming from his teammate Fernando Alonso when asked about Lewis Hamilton. He said, it's interesting, and I'm paraphrasing. It's interesting that some drivers will have a mediocre weekend and still finish in the top 5. All right, hey, worry about yourself, big dog. Hopefully you're on the team next year, because I promise you this: Papa Stroll's not kicking out Lance to make room for Max. Just saying, man. I hope you got a backup plan. So yeah, that's it. Oh man. Yes. And finally, before I end, shouts out to Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, but mostly Lewis for taking that car and putting it in a P4 and a P6 respectively. Lewis was pretty excited. The car felt good during the race, by his own measure. We improved that qualifying and we continue with the race pace and we will get a win for sure. It's also nice to see that the relationship with Ricky Adami, his track engineer, is also improving. They're starting to get to know each other a lot better. So the learning curve for Lewis is very steep and has been steep, but he has continued to show growth and show improvement. So we'll see. Obviously, Monaco is up next. Unless something crazy happens, which I don't think it will, it's probably going to be if Oscar Piastri gets pole, he will most likely win. Although Although this year we have different rules for Monaco. So I'll probably put something out later to explain the new rules, but just as a refresher, it is a mandatory two-stop race this year. So you have to pit twice. This is just an attempt to make this race exciting. I had a video out earlier. I'll put a link somewhere there for that video to explain what's going on. But yeah, aside from that, Imola is over. The race was an okay one. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Not bad. Not like one of the best races I've seen. Some overtakes, safety cars, non McLaren winner, but I do not care. I actually want McLaren to keep winning. I want them to lock up that constructors, and I want them to lock up that WDC for sure. One of those two, either Lando or Oscar. I don't care. Just lock that up. All right, we don't need another fifth consecutive Red Bull, and we need to go ahead and cap them at 4, and then just keep it pushing to the next. But yeah, Monaco is up next. It is part of the Triple Crown of the motorsports world, obviously, along with the Indy 500 and along with the Le Mans 24-hour race. Monaco is one of prestige. It's, again, unpopular opinion. It's not the most exciting race, but qualifying Saturday, hey, don't miss qualifying on Saturday. That is literally all I'm going to say on that. But yeah, other than that, if you have stayed this long, please do not forget to comment, like, subscribe. It costs you nothing, and those likes help get my videos out to more people. As always, please share this. Tell your mommies, your papis, your tíos, tías, abuelos, abuelas, vecinos. That's your neighbors if you don't speak Spanish. For the Monoplaza F1 podcast, my name is Emi Vertre. Peace.